everybody who is logging in and participating in QREST in any way. We will have a small group today because there is the Tribal Lands and Environment Forum and the National Air Monitoring Conference, and other people have to drive long distances to their sites, so can't participate. I really very much our whole project of QREST is for you. And I want to make sure that you know that our goal is to build tribal capacity and to support you in your work, however works for you to achieve your objectives. So that's an intro. Chris, would you like to kick us off?
Sure. All right, so welcome everybody. As Melinda has indicated, there's not going to be a lot of us on. There's a couple of major conferences happening that a lot of tribal programs are attending. The National Ambient Air Monitoring Conference in New Orleans, and then there's also the Lands and Environment Forum that ITEP hosts. That will be that they're having that in Oregon this year. So I'm anticipating that a lot of folks will be attending those, but we still wanted to kick off our tribal QREST client users call here to get everybody off on a good footing with regards to where the tool is at and what we're doing right now. Just to give you guys a little bit of information. So where the QREST began, we started working on this in 2000, I believe, and actually it was 2019. What had occurred was there was an old network called the TREX network, Tribal Information Exchange Network, and that was a proprietary software that was developed by IPS Meteostar, and the funding for that project went away, and unfortunately it wasn't refunded, and so tribes were kind of left in a lurch. There were a number of tribes that were utilizing that TREX network to get their data reported to the AQS, as well as utilizing it for other management purposes. And so there was a request that was sent out to ITEP and devising ways to address that situation. And thankfully, Melinda was really the one who spearheaded this and working with Doug Timms to develop an open source code software to help tribes with those needs that the TREX was providing. And a big key thing to all this was to develop a tool that was open source code. That way, there wouldn't be any issues with regards to having to pay subscription fees and that sort of thing. And again, this tool is a tool that's provided to you all at no cost, and it's covered by our funding, our ITEP funding. There are some big plans that we ultimately want to develop for this tool, which is to turn it over to the tribes users group, and the tribes have ultimate control of how that tool is developed and how it's administered. Right now, again, because it's under ITEP funding, we're the ones that are kind of serving in that role, but ultimately we do want to turn it over to the tribes, and what that will accomplish is it will give the tribes ultimate control of all aspects of the tool, as well as the contents, the data that's being housed within the database. That will be ultimately the control of the tribes, and the tribes will have the ultimate authority on how that's released. Right now, again, because it's ITEP is the one that's overseeing the administration of the tool, where we are limited in things that we can do. The agency can still direct certain things that we can do, but again, ultimately, those are big goals for the tool. But I just wanted to provide some of that oversight or overview information for you all on this tool from where it began to where it's at right now. And I'll turn it back over to Melinda, who will go into some detail on the reason for this call and additional information on what's been happening with the tool. And with that, I'll turn it over to you, Melinda.
Thank you. Well, one of the things that I've learned actually from bad experience is the value of transparency. So just because this is your tool and at some point you may be interacting with any of us, I won't go ahead and introduce myself to you because probably you already know me. And if not, let me reiterate that we fully expect to spend time with you one-on-one. This is a lot. It is sort of easy to grasp once you get your sites and your samplers set up. But in any case, transparency is one of our mottos. So I'd like if everybody could introduce themselves. So Chris went ahead and introduced himself. Oh my goodness, Zoom. And I don't know who is next on our list. If you could please go ahead and introduce yourself. Zoom. Oh, so frustrating.
I'll go next.
Thank
Doug
you.
Timms. I'm the programmer for QREST and been working on building QREST since, like Chris mentioned, starting around 2019, 2020. So, we've just been working together for years now on building the QREST system. And so if you have any questions that are technical related to what the system does at a technical level or programming level, just let me know. I could answer for you.
Thank you, Doug.
I'll go next. Hi, everyone. My name's Natasha Fulton. I've been with ITEP for, gosh, maybe 10 years, both full-time and part-time. I've been on part-time status for the past year, and I was brought onto the QREST project back in March to assist with the of the software. So that's what I've been working on these last few months. And I'll have some more updates on that later on. I just wanted to say hello and welcome.
I guess I'll go next. Thanks, Natasha. My name is Michael King. Like pretty familiar with all of you on the call. I just help with QREST on the back end, getting network data loggers connected to QREST. Just working with tribes to understand like the different network configurations that QREST communicates with, in addition to the data loggers. But just one little thing I just wanted to add is like, a lot of the network setups or configurations are all different across the board. It's just really working with your tribal IT. And unfortunately, with the TAM Center, we do have some data loggers we can loan, but majority of our support services as far as the network configurations is really limited. We do have air resource specialists that will come on and help with that process as well. But yeah, I just want to introduce myself. So thanks for being on the call. Thank you.
Thank you. As Mike said, everybody's network connection is individual. And that's one of the reasons we developed QREST actually, is because when I started at ITEP 25 years ago, I went to the state of Arizona. I looked at the state of California. What data management systems do they have? How do they do the review? How do they send their data to AQS? And in general, at least 6 people in a county and a state do the work of every one tribal professional. And because of that, and it's ridiculous to think that you're gonna, from scratch, learn R or learn statistics in Excel. So that's one reason we developed QREST. The other is because as an outgrowth of our QAPP work, always in your QAPP, you say somewhere, at least for level 1 and level 2 projects, there'll be somebody blah, 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 blah to review my data, which is really difficult to do if you're a 1-person program, or even if you're a 2-person program, there are restrictions on that for NAAQS comparable data. So we developed QREST so that you could collaborate with other tribal professionals on reviewing your data. Because states and counties, they all have their own databases, they have their own systems, they all have their 45 people in their AIR programs that do the work that you guys do. So we developed QREST as an answer to some of these problems. But in the beginning, middle, and end, QREST is for you. It's a tool for you. We developed this based upon working with you and what you've needed over the years, but we really rely on you to tell us what is working for you, what isn't, what you think more training should be on, whatever, because that's our job to fulfill those. So I was going to first talk about the roles in QREST, because that's something that everybody needs to get straight, because different user logins have different privileges in terms of accessing your data. Then Doug Timms is going to talk about some fantastic new features that have been developed in the past 3 weeks, partially in response to that Microsoft update that crashed everything down. And so Doug has written some programs that actually go back into your data loggers and try to fill in gaps. So he's going to talk about those things. And then Natasha has done some fantastic work with us on our documentation, and she's going to talk about that in terms of different features in QREST that you can upload supporting documentation to. We are totally revising the help, and Natasha will talk about that. And then Mike will talk about the very difficult but critical topic of connecting your data loggers remotely to pull to QREST. Then we can talk a little bit more about what Chris mentioned our ultimate goal is, which is to transition QREST to tribal governance. We don't think that's going to be a fast process at all, and we want to work with you on every step of the way. Again, transparency. And then we're going to turn off the recording, and maybe you guys can ask questions that you didn't feel great about asking while the session is being recorded, as I often do myself. So does anybody have any questions right now before I just review the QREST user roles? All right. Okay. So basically, as you know, QREST has different user roles. So the tribal admin, and our philosophy is for whoever is the tribal admin in QREST for your agency, they have total control over everything. They can edit or add information about the site, the monitors, the polling, the data. They can change how the data is flagged automatically, look at QC results, and they are totally in charge of the personnel associated with your tribal agency in QREST. So what they do then is they assign an operator. So a site operator has the ability to edit the site, because sometimes they might need to do that, but they don't have the ability to delete a site. That has to be done by the tribal agency admin. They can do most things except for level 2 review, because the way we've set it up basically is that the site operator gathers the data and does the level 1 review, because this is what I found. If you collapse if you collapse 6 people down into one, this is sort of how Maricopa County does it, right? Where you have the site operators and they have certain privileges and they do the first review, because the site operators are the most important person, because they actually were there. So they understand, or at least they're looking at the data for a site that they're familiar with the environment. So the site operator does the level 1 review, and then they need somebody else to do the level 2 review. Now, if you're a tiny agency, don't worry, all these roles can be filled by the same person. So and this is common if you're gathering informational only data, that you might have all these roles filled by the same person. And then the site operator can enter QC results, view results, and can send data to AQS. viewing all the data reports. So the site operator is a critical person to look at the data and conduct the first level of review. Now, keep in mind, this is how we've structured QREST. So think about this in terms of how it works for your program and if it doesn't or does, because it's all for you. Then a third person could be a QA reviewer. And usually, if it's a small tribal agency, that QA reviewer might be external to your tribal government completely. It may be somebody from another tribe or just a person that you've contracted with, perhaps. And so the QA reviewer can view the data. They can add supporting documentation, like an audit report, for example. They can set AQS null codes, but they can't do all the things that the tribal admin can do. So we've set up the role of QA reviewer to suit the case where it's somebody outside of the tribal agency. And then read only, these people, for some reason, I have the idea that these are interns who are like helping you with your data and they can't edit anything, but they can read these items here in green. So they can look at the data, they can review the documentation, etc. So this is our structure. And again, keep in mind, this might be one person, two people, three people. Also, you could have multiple site operators. You could have multiple QA reviewers. So if you have some of your work looked at by one person and other parts of your work looked by another, or you guys are going to swap or whatever, it's very flexible. And the tribal admin has is the only one who has the ability to set these roles for the other people in your tribal agency. Before I leave this topic, let me just show you, and this is excerpted from our new help that Natasha and I are going to be finishing this week. But we have roles and responsibilities too. So we have at the TAM Center, we're QREST admins, and we're responsible for making sure the polling is still on. Now, your particular site might have gone down, but that the QREST service is still running. So we check that every morning. We're also responsible for maintaining the AQS parameter method code list so that you don't have to. So once a month, I'll go in and download that list from AQS and upload it into QREST so that it's current. We're also responsible for maintaining the CDX so that when you send data to AQS through QREST, you can use the QREST default credentials, and we're responsible for keeping those up to date. So in actuality, you only need your AQS username, and then in AQS, that username has to be associated with your tribal agency, and you have to go into AQS and say, yes, accept data using this QREST default CDX. And all you need to know, and you don't even need to keep your AQS credentials up to date, as long as you have that user ID. But of course, you want to keep your AQS credentials up to date for other reasons. Then we're responsible for funding the annual cloud storage and services fees, and we'll talk a little bit more about that later, but it's less than you think. And then maintaining accurate documentation so that when you log into QREST and you click on the help button, that is up to date. So if anything changes, we're responsible for updating those pages in the help. Like I said, we're responsible for working with you individually. I don't think it's ever happened that a tribal agency has connected to QREST without any work with us, because it's just so individual. So that's part of our job. Part of what isn't our job is to access any information about your agency, anything, without your approval or request. So sometimes people email me, can you look at my data? There's some weird codes coming in. Okay, then I have your request that's okay to do. If it's not explicit, I'll email you back and say, is it okay if I access your data? So we're not going to be looking at your data or looking over your shoulder at all. If somebody asks about your data or like a list of tribal air agencies in QREST, our policy is to go back to you and then say to that requester, you contact the tribe and ask the question yourself, because we are not, we're not a go-between between tribal agencies and EPA in any way. This is a tool solely to build tribal capacity. And then our fantastic global administrator, Doug Timms, who his company is called Open Environment, because the work that he does is writing open source software, which means it's publicly available, free, and yay, completely transparent. So he keeps the cloud database going, and has done some fantastic work refining QREST after that polling incident when the Microsoft update went out. He's responsible for telling us how much money we have to give him. And he helps us with the QREST documentation. So that is our responsibilities and kind of an overview of these roles. Does anybody have any questions about this? Okay, the next item on our agenda is Doug is going to tell us how he saved the day after the Microsoft update and other great new features.
Thank you, Melinda. So actually, I'm going to flip things a little. I just wanted to talk about the improvements that we made to the manual import first, just because chronologically that happened first earlier in the summer. We knew that manual import needed a little attention and improvement, so we made a couple of changes related to that. Maybe I can share my screen.
Yes. Natasha, can you make Doug a co-host? I have a frozen screen. Or Chris, or Mike. I'll
I
stop
made the
share.
co-host.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you guys see my screen right now?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Oh, I needed to click that button. Now you can, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, great. So, this is the manual import page. I know some people don't use manual import. Some people use it exclusively. Some people maybe just use it when there are issues and they need to kind of backfill some data. So, one of the changes that we made was on the import history page, when you can look at a history of all the manual imports that you've done. We've always had the ability that you could go back and look at a past one and click imported to pull up like an Excel spreadsheet of all the data that was imported that you can see here. So for that particular import, you imported X number of records and you can download that in an Excel file. Well, we added a new option earlier in the summer, this raw, and that represents the raw import file. When you copy and pasted your data into the text box, you can kind of retrieve that back again, which could definitely be helpful to help troubleshoot things, or if you want to re-import the data, or not have to worry about keeping track of your old import files because QREST just has them all. So here's an example of one. If you click that raw link, it'll just download the original block of text that you copy and pasted into the text box to import it. Another thing we worked on was detecting gaps in your manually imported data. So if you're importing data, you might have a situation where your import, is missing some values. It could be like that you have a row for it, but just the value is blank, or maybe you're just missing rows entirely for a certain set of data because the logger was down, nothing was getting recorded in your file. So now when you are importing data, as you go through the import wizard, when it's done importing records, it will scan through your import file and check to see if there are any data gaps found, and then list them here. and you can then review those and then click to import those, fill those gaps. So this will take a look at not only the data that you're importing, but the data that was already in CREST. So you could have the example where I'm importing data, but I'm just backfilling a few missing records. So if you were to just purely look at my import file, it would look like I've got a lot of gaps, but really once that gets merged with the data that's already in CREST, you could see that, okay, you're good. There's no gaps here. So your import file just goes in, no problem. The good thing about this data gap detection is that if you have been using manual import and you've got a long history, like you can see here in CREST test, you can go back to any of those past import records. And now click on this imported link, which is also new. And when you click on that, it will bring you back to the import wizard for that old import. And if there were gaps related to that import, you can go and fill those in. So you don't have to necessarily take care of it right on that day that you did the import. You could come back later. Okay. And one other just slight kind of bug fix or improvement is in the past, when you manually import data, you have to select an import template. And if you had a situation where you had to find an import template and that import template expects 10 columns, because let's say the 10th column was PM, but you're only importing 8 columns because right now you're not interested in importing PM, it would fail. You would have to just define a template that matches your import columns or put in something dummy related or put in those values back again. But that's not an issue anymore. So now if you're importing and your import file happens to be fewer columns than the template expects, it'll still work. It just those additional columns, nothing will happen for those. Okay.
Thank
So
you.
that's our improvements that we did to the manual import. And the other change was later in the summer. Some of you may have heard of the CrowdStrike outage, which kind of affected things globally, and CREST was no exception to that. The Microsoft Azure services hosted in the central US data center had massive widespread outages. So CREST was down. That was the bad news. The good news is it kind of forced us to take a look at how CREST can recover from these outages. So we rewrote the logic for retrieving data from the Xeno and Sutron loggers so that instead of just like taking X number of most recent records, every time we pull the loggers now, we'll check in CREST what was the last data we have, and then just pull records since then. And now we won't pull all the records since then because we want to keep things moving along for other data loggers that we're pulling from. So we just pulled the most 99 recent records that we don't have. Well, actually, I should say the oldest 99 records we don't have. And then the next time we pull, we'll grab the next 99, depending on how long the system's been down. But eventually, we catch up. CREST catches up and fills the gap of any missing data. And that outage also helped us just kind of look at how well it was handling for other loggers too. Some loggers, even though the system was down, CREST didn't have any issue. For any loggers that were directly pulling from the BAMs, no problem. Any that were going through the LoggerNet software had no problems. So all in all, it was a learning experience, and it was helpful for CREST to be better about handling outages because even though this one in July was a big one, there have been other small outages, or sometimes there's a logger is down. It's not CREST's fault, but it's just down for a while. And now we can kind of recover from that better when things do connect back up. One last thing related to that is we changed, and this is just very technical, we changed the timeout on how we connect to the loggers to make it more permissive. Because even when things were running smoothly, there are situations where when we're trying to pull from a logger, the logger is just taking too long to give us a response for whatever reason, network or just the logger software is just slow. And it was never really a problem because, you know, a few minutes later, a crest is going to pull again and eventually it all corrects itself. But just in looking at the logs now, having this more tolerant timeout really helps with our retrieval of data from Xeno and Sutron loggers, especially. So that was all I had.
Thank you, Doug. Kirch has a question. Yay.
Hi there. Kurt Lyons with the Winnebago tribe of Nebraska. Lower my hand here. I had originally planned to upload into QREST using CSV files, but I failed to think ahead far enough. I need to add a license to my laptop up at the site to convert an ASCII file to Excel. So, until if I need to, I can get Excel, I suppose. But can you upload into QREST using ASCII files?
Comma delimited. So it doesn't have to be.
Yeah, comma
tab.
delimited.
Yeah. Most data comes as comma delimited, like in an export, in my experience.
Yeah, so really all you're doing in QREST, if you're manually importing it, is copy and pasting into a text box. Where you're copying from could be Excel, which generates a tab separated file, or you could copy and paste directly from a text file as a source, if that text file was comma separated, tab separated.
Because for now, I'm not going to have Excel until I can extend a license to the site for the tribe to do. But I just wanted to make sure that that wasn't going to be a showstopper. Yeah, I'll be exclusively because I use a Congrego data logger as part of the Ecotech family of instruments. So I'll have to, upload manually for everything, but that's fine. I was using QREST basically as my data management and QC, QA, all the other aspects of it.
That's good.
Thank you. And, Kurt, this tool is for you. So if there's, I don't know, if there's some specific thing that your data come off in this format, it has to be this way all the way, then we can work with you, or maybe like I can work with you on an intermediate step if that's necessary.
Yeah. I'd like to get,
you.
get some time with you online so we can, because I have, questions on, I'm not sure if I'm going overboard on things or what parameters to track.
Sure.
Is for like, I'm using my PM 2.5, using Teledyne T640. I'm doing things like box temp and ASC heater duty and signal lengths and things like that.
Right. Doesn't sound like
I don't
you need
know.
all of those. Yeah.
As troubleshooting data.
Well, just as an aside, you always have free Google Sheets. So I can work with you if you need to, but if you can paste the data into Google Sheets, then you can download it as a CSV file and you don't have to buy Excel.
Oh, okay. That's a good workaround.
Yeah.
Thanks for that tidbit.
Janice, did you have a question?
Yeah, hi. I
Hi.
was wondering, if you do upload missing data, do you have to have the exact dates and stuff, or can you just like throw in a big glob of data and it'll figure it out, Crest?
Um, that sounds really dangerous to me. I don't know. That sounds really scary. So the answer is no. Obviously, and this is something that Angelique and I knew from the first day we started making Tribal Data Toolbox, is that the date, time is a key field, right? So Crest, I mean, that sounds like AI, Janice, and maybe sometime we'll get that into Crest. But like where you could talk to Crest and say, okay, I'm putting a bunch of data here and it's from this day. Um, we'll put that in our list, Janice, but it sounds like an AI kind of task. So no, you have to have the date, time, site, monitor, units, POC, all that stuff in order for Crest to put in the right place. Because some people may have, POC 2, POC 3 of the same instrument, so it needs to know where to put it.
Yeah,
Okay.
I was just wondering more or less about the correct date and times. Sometimes, when you cut and paste or something, you overlap one
Oh,
hour
yeah.
thing.
Yes, that's fantastic about Crest.
Hmm.
And it's also true of AQS too, which is that you cannot, if there's overlapping data, Doug's pulling it up now, Crest will ask you, hey, you already have data in here for this date, time monitor. Do you want to overwrite it or do you want to stop your import? So it will ask you, and it will not overwrite anything that you already have in there without like several steps of you saying, yes, this is what I want to do.
Okay, all right. Thank you so much.
Sure.
And we do have some options in terms of the date and time formatting to match whatever you're pulling from. And in fact, Crest is even a little bit, even though you would put in one particular date format, like let's say I put MMDDYYYY here, Crest does try to guess a little bit beyond that, and fit it. Even if it's like not fitting right, it still tries to fit it in other ways, to make those date times be something that's readable.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, our next item we wanted to talk about was Natasha telling us about two new features in Crest. And take it away, Natasha.
All right, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So I'll try to keep this pretty short. I know we're getting close to the top of the hour. We still have some notes from Mike. So this probably might be less applicable to some of you if you're already familiar with Crest and you're learning just by doing. And so when Melinda and I were reviewing documentation and how we could make it more user friendly, we started with training courses, and the idea is to empower you to figure out how to use Crest yourself, and also to make you happy so you can increase your use of Crest, because we want you to keep using Crest. And so for new users, we started with training courses, and so this is getting a whole makeover in combination with the online help pages, which is accessible by this question mark here. So if you're taking these courses, great, you can keep doing that. We're going to edit these and hopefully complete it within the next 2 weeks. That's a goal. And so this will look different. If you have any concerns about accessing this, let us know. You can email me or Melinda if you'd still like to use this in its current form. We were trying to be mindful of people who learn better by videos, by reading a user's manual, by one-on-one work. So that's the point of us redoing this, because if you've done these, you'll notice it's pretty text heavy, with maybe videos and images. If that works for you, great. We'll still have the user's guide available for you. So what we did was take all of the content here and cross-check it with all of the content on this page, and figure out where there's overlap and how to best display this for people learning how to use QREST. Because if you hadn't figured it out already, if you click any of these items from this menu, and if you're on this page and you click the help button, it should take you to the link or the section here on this page. Maybe I picked the wrong one as an example. Let's try quality control checks. And if I want to know more, I would click the help. And it could just be my internet that's not cooperating. So Melinda and I are going to work on updating these. There will be a brand new user's guide, which is currently not in QREST, but we're on version 4 now. And there's always room for improvements. So maybe if you're working through QREST and you find something that is not yet documented, or if you think would be a helpful addition, I mean, we're always open to those suggestions. But yeah, we've done a lot of work in cleaning this up for new users, because one dream of goal of QREST is to give this ownership to another tribal consortia in the future, maybe distant future. But that way, everything is logged, and there's this should cover almost everything in QREST. But with the new developments that Doug has created, those can get logged too. So this, yeah, it's just a quick update, letting you all know that this page here, the online help page and training, will undergo a lot of changes in the next 2 weeks. But again, you're welcome to continue asking for help. I believe the training page will house mostly videos. So if you feel better with videos, those will be here. Some FAQs, templates. I think that's all that I have as far as my update.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
I'll stop sharing.
Our goal is to make the help comprehensive, and then I'm really looking forward to taking a whole 2 weeks off and just making videos. So I know that you guys have requested that, and so that's definitely on our list. Before Mike talks about data loggers, I just want to say we can go over. So, we'll try to be brief to make sure we are efficient for your day, but we can go over, and I can stay online if anybody wants to talk afterwards. So Mike, would you like to present on the data loggers that have been connected to QREST?
Okay, sure. I'll share my screen really quick. I'm gonna bring a couple slides here. I provided this presentation at the NTF AQ as part of one of the pre-conference trainings that we provided on QREST. Can you guys see my screen?
Yep, I see it.
Yep.
Okay. Just making sure it's not the it's the correct screen, not the presentation screen where it's got the notes.
There's data loggers, Xeno.
Yeah.
Clear.
Okay, cool. So these are the data loggers that QREST supports and it's compatible with. Obviously the Xeno, the older Sutron loggers, but also the Agile PC-based logger, and the older ESC loggers, which are the 8832s and the 16s, and also all the Campbell loggers. There's various Campbell loggers out there. We also can connect directly to Met1 Instruments internal data loggers, such as the BAM 1020 and 1022. Currently, right now, these are the loggers that we can connect to, and it's compatible with QREST. But when we look at making those connections on the back end, is kind of a lot of the work that I do in regards to QREST is establishing an internet connection, either through wireless or satellite, allowing that connection to be made to the data logger through a modem router and the analyzers or the monitors. And really that network setup may look something like this for a more robust monitoring system. We have the gaseous analyzers or the monitors reporting data to a data logger, that data logger communicating with the switch through like Ethernet connection to some wireless modem or router that sends that data to some data acquisition system or data management system. So this is kind of just a quick look at that setup, those different components. But really, this is just another example setup. I don't want to get too much into this, but this is more for like connecting to Met1 BAM instrument internal data loggers. But really what this looks like as far as equipment, obviously you have your internet, which is provided by a internet service provider. That may vary. Obviously, that's typically a monthly or annual cost. I just kind of break it down as far as these what the different network hardware looks like. The router, the modem. If you have like a serial connection that needs to be converted to Ethernet, there's usually some type of serial device server that's required. A lot of times these newer monitors and data loggers have Ethernet ports where you can connect directly from a switch from that router to that monitor or data logger. One thing that's really important to have to make the connection is a static IP address, and this is for TCP IP connections. So you'll need to have a static IP which you obtain from your internet service provider. And that's basically an address specific to your monitoring system, your data logger, and your different monitors that you have, so you can make that connection through port forwarding of that modem and router. Obviously, this is just an example. I know it's kind of hard to see with all the cable and stuff, but of that system or that network setup. So just wanted to share these are just examples again of a modem router connecting with a Campbell logger through that Ethernet port there. Similarly with a serial connection, if you don't have that Ethernet connection. So you see the also if you don't have that Ethernet connection, you can use a serial device server, which converts that serial connection to Ethernet. That's usually typically used for like the older Xeno, Sutron, the ESE 8816 loggers, as you can see here. But that's pretty much what I got, guys. I just wanted to share this information with you. And I know that a lot of the network hardware, the configurations is all across the board throughout Indian country. And I really just recommend those of you that are interested in connecting to QREST to have that remote data access or polling to QREST to work with your tribal IT to just get past some of those security measures, as well as setting up that port forwarding, the rules needed to connect to your equipment, your monitors. We also have air resource specialists available that we have a little bit set aside funding, not much, but enough to at least help with if you need assistance with setting up the network configuration or the port forwarding. And I see Joey on the call. Joey, are you there? I know we've been working with ARS along with Shoshone Bannock's tribes to help them reestablish their connection as well. But if you guys have any questions, feel free to let me know. Thank you.
Thank you. Woo, Mike. I tell you, we could not do this without you. So we are grateful. I just want to end by talking about the future of QREST a bit. Our plan is to work eventually to transition QREST to tribal governance. And perhaps the first step of that is going to be for us to collaborate with a tribal agency or a group of tribes to apply for an exchange network grant. I know there's a lot of restrictions on that grant, but it sounds like it would be perfect for transitioning QREST to tribal governance. So that's all I have to say about that. Could you stop recording, Natasha, before I go on?